Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk today about building belonging. I've had the opportunity to go to different sites and see wonderful examples of this, whether it is starting off your morning with an anthem, as Hamilton does, and we got to see that a few weeks ago, or, I've been able to be at August for a few weeks and seeing the administrators out jumping rope with kids, or here at Rio being able to see staff greet students and the admins greet students every morning and at the end of the day and taking turns doing that. I think that's such an important piece of letting students know that we see you when you're here and you're a part of our community. So let's go ahead and get started with the benefits of building belonging. Essentially what we're talking about is really building community and identifying with a community. And that's such an important piece, not only for our students, but for our staff as well, right? So what are some of the benefits? Well, it increases motivation, it increases academic performance, emotional wellness, optimism, self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-concept, sociability. And it decreases dropout rate, right? This is the buy-in, and this is why we want this. We want to increase belonging because it pays off in such a huge way. This is our college, career, and community-ready student. Let's take a look at some considerations as we move forward. I think there are these two big considerations, right? One is equity, and the other is trauma-informed care. Really taking into consideration that the classroom has this unique opportunity to provide equal supports and equitable opportunity to all students, right? Making education and participation accessible to everyone. Understanding that it's not about students fitting the mold, but breaking that mold altogether and understanding and recognizing that students are unique individuals with unique learning styles and skills and histories, and that they are the experts in their lives. And being able to honor each student's uniqueness as something that is valuable rather than something that is a deficit, even the trauma that they bring in, even the experiences that they bring in that are different from our own, being able to recognize that there's resiliency in there, that there's strength in there, that there is uniqueness in that, right? What I have here on the right, this circle that you see, this is a social ecological approach to school belonging. And I think the important piece here is understanding that our students come in with so much more than just what they woke up with that morning, right? There are biological factors, there are all these different systems in place that affect that student. And I think seeing it, just kind of seeing it in that global sense of all the different pieces that every student is walking in with, whether again, it is social climate or what's going on currently in the government or what's going on currently culturally, different policies that affect students in school, out of school, looking at their family systems, looking at even biological factors, right? Genetics, any of those things. What are our students coming in with that make them unique? And what we can take away from that is understanding that there are unique needs for each student. In this, I also want to highlight culturally responsive teaching. I think it's so important that each student is able to identify themselves in the classroom, identify themselves in education, right? In that learning experience. In our home, we have books that have individuals that look like my son, that look like students in his classroom, that look like people in the community that he's never met, right? That look different from him, that look similar to him. And I think the important piece there is that he is able to see himself and people that he knows or people that he's interested in different cultures in these books. And think about how powerful that is for students to see themselves as a character, to see themselves as a hero in a book, to see themselves as part of literature. That's huge, to see their culture celebrated. To have a different culture explained to them. I mean, that's a powerful piece, right? To see a poster where a student looks like they might be from their background. All of those things invite students in our classroom. They invite students to be unique, to carry their uniqueness, to understand a different culture, understand a different background. That's huge, right? It speaks to, let's not look at each other as separate, but let's learn from each other. Let's understand each other. And let's build a community with these differences. So I think that's such an important piece. Truly, even having a few books that, have or celebrate different holidays in different cultures, like it can be as simple as that. Again, keeping in mind, and I think especially right now, how relevant this is with, currently we've had a couple of sites that where they have had, students have had violence in their community, right? Shootings in the community, and it's been relentless. And so keeping in mind trauma-informed care, how can our students come in and learn when they feel unsafe at home? When they are scared in their own communities or have had loss in their communities, in their neighborhoods, how can they feel safe at home and at school? And truly understanding that, again, for students to buy into rules and structure and following a system, they really do need to feel like they belong to that system, right? I think there are so many pieces recently where we can expect that students are going to have a difficult time adjusting, and might have experienced more trauma and have more trauma responses as they come into school, and understanding that really changes the way that we are able to focus and function, and understanding the importance of teaching self-regulation skills in school and incorporating mindfulness techniques in the classroom, and de-escalation techniques in the classroom. Taking one mindful minute to just take a breath after, going out to the playground, or, right after a test. This is testing week, or currently for me, it's testing week. But being able to take deep breaths during that, right? Or being able to say to students, okay, we've been sitting down for a really long time. Let's stand up and just kind of shake, right? Just kind of get this energy out. Those simple little pieces where we're teaching students how to regulate. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the additional barriers that our students are coming in with. I feel like this year we've talked a lot about just kind of the little pieces of how can we maintain our wellness. And really that's because, right, our capacity was kind of lowered. Just because of everything that's been going on in the last couple of years, that constant shifting, that change, and then us having to adapt to that, and our students having to shift and change and be displaced from what is their typical routine, and then jump into a new routine, and then jump into another routine. That constant shifting and changing, right? That's stressful. I think that's stressful for anyone. I think it has been stressful for everyone. Dealing with prolonged isolation, we know that chronic loneliness puts our brain in a highly stressed state, and that impacts our overall physical wellness and emotional wellness, and it makes it difficult to learn. Change is difficult, adjustment is difficult, and that students are coming in, and I think individuals in general, staff, everyone, it has come in with increased anxiety and that lowered capacity. And what does that mean? So what's going on for our brains is that we are trying to seek safety, right? How can we stay safe? Reading and analyzing everything around us to see what is safe and what's not, being kind of hyper vigilant in that sense, right? And that's an exhausting and distracting state to be in. So with all of that, how do we as staff demonstrate safety, demonstrate belonging and building safety through that community, through belonging and awareness of what our students are coming in with, and understanding and empathy of what our students are coming in? Let's look at some approaches to building belonging or building community. So I think one is recognizing that belonging is a fundamental human need. right? We aren't necessarily meant to just be separate and kind of function on our own, but really this is something that goes down to, this is a human need at our core, is to belong, right? Again, this goes back to feeling safe, and that we are kind of set up to be a part of a community. So looking at recognizing that students may spiral when they lack belonging, I think that's such an important piece. And then understanding that really worrying about belonging is something that can come in and out. It's not like a stagnant thing that, as a student is, first entering school, they might feel a little uncomfortable, but that just kind of goes away. Because the truth is, and I think that, this is true for everyone, is that when we have shifts or changes, when we have a new job that we're entering, or if we have a new classroom that we're entering, a new grade that we're entering, a different school that we're entering, right? We have those thoughts of like, oh my gosh, what's that going to be like? What's this new classroom that's coming in going to be like? Is it going to be like, a bunch of kids that, I'm not going to mesh with, or, family members that, how am I going to, that are so different from me? Like, how am I going to be able to really relate, or whatever it is? And then similarly for our students, having to question, what is that next classroom going to be like? I think that worrying about transition is such an important piece. And I think that as we are closing out the year, being able to have those conversations with our students, are you worried about next year? What are some of your feelings about, transitioning to the 8th grade or high school or whatever it is that they're transitioning to? And then as students come in the following year, being able to kind of ask, hey, what are some things that you're kind of worried about this year? What are some feelings that people are having today? And then again, incorporating some of those calming techniques, like let's all breathe together, or let's all, shake together, or let's all journal together for a few minutes and kind of like be able to process the feelings that we're having right now. And then practicing, looking at things of how can we build community. So practice being inclusive. One would be, at that point, I think it would be so important to find similarities as students are like re-entering school, right? So next year, kind of looking at what are some similarities that we have. And that could even be, I've seen like little getting to know you bingo that the classroom can kind of do, where it's like, find someone that has a pet, or find someone that likes Legos, or find someone who plays a sport. And then seeing, what are some of those shared hobbies or those shared interests, right? You can also do like a classroom project and kind of group people together. And I think that the really important piece there is that people, I think, can be very competitive. And so it could be one of those things where it's kind of cool to join in and build something with your team, or build something with your group, and kind of seeing, how to best communicate with each other. And then processing that. I think there's such an important piece with kind of processing, like, how was that to, who stepped out as a team leader? Or, what was that like to build something together? What are some things that didn't work out? What are some things we'd like to do differently next time? Any of those questions, right? I think that what that does is that kind of encourages like that introspection. And I think, again, that kind of speaks to like, oh, I never really thought about like, I'm somebody who likes to, take charge, or I'm somebody who likes to hear different people kind of come up with ideas and then think about it and then respond to it, right? I think having those intentional conversations about classroom culture is huge. When I ran groups, that was the first thing that we did, is that we made group rules with all of our students. What is important to you? And I would run like 3 different types of groups a couple times a week, and post my group rules for each group that I ran, and they were different because they spoke to what was important to that particular group at that time. So again, like collaborating on classroom norms. if it's something like, to be a good citizen in the classroom, we have to be safe. Well, really looking at what does safety mean to each student? For some students, that might mean, don't throw things, don't, flip a desk, like the kind of like typical things that you think about. For some students, that might mean structure, raising your hand, that everybody, needs to take turns speaking, or, that everything has to be kind of organized because that feels safe to some people. For some people, disorganization feels really unsafe and really uncomfortable and kind of increases anxiety for them. Belonging routines. I think this is so important. I love this. I love when I like catch this somewhere. But something as simple as like a morning, like high five routine, or a morning, back and forth as students are kind of lining up to get into the classroom. Or like I said earlier, with Hamilton, like how they have their kind of morning anthem, and then their like Hamilton motto at the end of that, where they, talk about, I am going to do this today, or whatever it was. Really cool, right? Being able to have something that speaks to, this is our routine, and this is how we feel like a member of this classroom community. And then modeling understanding and acceptance. I think this is such a huge piece in being able to, one, I think even as like a teacher or, a leader, to really take moments to not only speak about like empathy, and to display empathy and understanding, but also humility, to be able to say to students, oh gosh, you know what, I made a mistake that day. And to show that you can come back from mistakes, or, oh, I got so flustered that day, and I reacted like this, right? I think that's so important to show, especially modeling to students and children, that it's okay to make mistakes and that adults make mistakes. And the really cool thing is adults are able to respect you enough to come back and say, gosh, I made a mistake. And let's recover from that, right? Here are some activities that I have, which I really loved these. One is how to fill your bucket. I think this would be so cool to kind of, you can see there's kind of like a book about that as well, but just kind of speak to what are some ways, especially as I talked about, kind of that lack of capacity right now. We're just kind of, especially towards the end of the year, it's just so draining. What are some ways that we can fill our bucket again? What are some ways that we can build up that capacity again? And then having students, or even in a staff meeting, having something like that where you're able to say, this has been a rough year. So what are some ways as staff that we can kind of fill our bucket, listening to each other, being kind to each other, following rules, all of those. I love this shout out door. This is super cool. I think it's like, even the colors and stuff they use, it's just very inviting. But having that on, like, the morning door as you walk in, or having that, right as students walk in on their wall, just giving shout outs, or to staff members. I love that. We used to have something at a site that I was at where it was, shout outs that we would give each other, and I still have them, and they're super meaningful. So being able to, whether in a classroom or in a staff lounge, just sticking shout outs to people and taking the time to kind of look at them, and taking the time to put one on there. I mean, I think that would be a great way to show community. Again, I love this getting to know each other, especially for students, just being able to kind of have like that Venn diagram of like, here are the things that are unique to me, and here are the things that are unique to you, but here are the things that are actually quite similar for both of us, right? We both like to read, or we both have, the same teacher, or whatever it is. I think some of those things can be really surprising, like, oh, I didn't know that you are really into playing this sport. That's really cool. Or I didn't know that, you have, I don't know, whatever, like 3 dogs. That's cool. What are their names, right? And then, setting aside, I think, some time for students and people to kind of have those little conversations and kind of practice those social skills, especially as we've been gone for so long. I think that that can motivate a lot of conversation, and again, that community piece within the classroom. I hope all of this was helpful to you guys. I hope that it sparks some ideas for next year and ways to kind of close out the year. Good luck to everyone.